Welcome to The Route to Success, where we dive into the personal stories of leaders transforming communities through grit, purpose, and innovation. I'm your host, Sarah Oriana. Today I'm joined by David Flynn, a retired U.S. Army veteran and the president of AmplifiedAg, a company leading the charge in combining agricultural and technology to fight food insecurity. David's journey from serving in combat zones overseas to helping lead a mission-driven tech company here at home is both unexpected and inspiring. In this episode, we'll explore how his military service shaped his leadership, how vertical farming and innovation can change the future of the food, and what it looks like to build a career rooted in hope, vision, and service. Hello, David. It's so good to have you here today.
Well, hello, Sarah. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you.
I'm excited to talk about this. Urban farming, which is what I call it, is something that's a passion of mine to learn more about. So let's dive in. You spent 25 years in the military and then made the jump into tech and agriculture. Can you walk us through that journey and what led you to AmplifiedAg?
Sure. So it's kind of a funny story that takes me back as a college student at Clemson University in South Carolina. Originally, I was from Boston, Massachusetts, suburbs of Boston, and went to Clemson back in the day. And as an out-of-stater at Clemson in the spring, there's not a lot going on campus. And so I had roommates that were local, at least in the state of South Carolina, and they would take me home to their homes in Charleston, outside of Charleston, James Island, Johns Island. And I fell in love with the city of Charleston and the ocean and everything else that is to do with this area. And so when I left the military in 2015, I decided that I would venture to Charleston to live out my dream in my dream destination. And so when I came here, my wife's a school teacher. She got a job in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and then I set out to networking. And I ran into the founder of our company, which is Don Taylor. And Don was a technology expert. He was a CTO of a large company here in Charleston called Benefit Focus. And then Don had set off to marry technology with agriculture in this new startup that, I get introduced to him as a networking opportunity. And, after a couple of conversations, he painted the vision of marrying this technology with agriculture and doing something good with it, bringing it to places where people were in need, people were undernourished or just in general hungry. And the notion of having technology inserted into shipping containers, a component that could be rapidly deployed somewhere into any place on Earth, intrigued me as part of a mission-based company. And that's kind of where I said, he said, "Hey, would you like to help me start the company up?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." So I joined in 2015 and off we ran.
So in an earlier conversation, you mentioned you never planned to join a startup, but you found yourself drawn to this mission, as you just said. Can you kind of connect your personal values and experience to that excitement? I know you said rapidly deploy and helping people who are underfed, which I know for a lot of people in the US is hard to understand that we do have what's called food deserts. And I've worked with several communities where they don't have a grocery store in the entire community. They're trying to shop at the dollar store, which we both know you can't do. So can you kind of just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so really, I harkened back to my combat experience that you alluded to leading off the show. And, when I was in Afghanistan on my last deployment in 2011, I was in Kandahar. I was in a rural agrarian society, Arghandab district, which was right along the Arghandab River. And I saw people struggling to farm in that area, which was drought. There were droughts there. And so they had to make the most of the river to create a canal system to irrigate the fields. And, one of the missions that we had was to improve the economy of this poor area. And so we were partnered with USAID. We were partnered with them in the sense of, I can tell a story of the pomegranate orchards in Afghanistan, in this particular area, the best pomegranates on earth. And I would watch one of the local residents. his name is Muhammad. Muhammad would take a wheelbarrow down a goat trail into the orchards with his son, and they would go and they would pick pomegranates, fill up the wheelbarrow, and then come back along an arduous trail, and then sell those pomegranates in the village for pennies. So the vision from USAID in concert with us was to broker a deal where they could sell those pomegranates in Dubai and get $7 for each fruit of pomegranate. So our job became creating a road network to widen that trail, so that Muhammad can now get a truck, either a pickup truck or a dump truck, down into the orchard and then harvest more fruit and get that fruit to the airfield, which was about 20 miles away, and then fly that produce into Dubai. And now everybody's doing better. Right now, the
Right.
economy is improving in that district. And so not only was it about helping the people from a jobs perspective, from a health perspective, to growing perspective, but now economically. And when I tie that back to my conversation with Don, it really inspired me to kind of continue that mission, if you will, and see what we could do with agriculture in a different way.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about blending agriculture and technology. What makes your approach differently? And without giving away any trade secrets, how is your company doing that combination of agriculture and technology?
Well, it's really set on the foundation. Our business, back in 2002, was a warehouse management system provider for the third-party logistics industry. And we had a technology stack that was, based on warehouse management systems. And then we took that and revamped it, wrote new code, wrote new procedures, and tailored it towards a farm application. And so that farm application then expanded into, bringing in IoT, Internet of Things, sensors and controllers. And so everything was based off of the hub of that technology network that we then built infrastructure around. And that infrastructure surrounded the technology to allow people to remotely interact with the environment, to allow them to be very disciplined in the distribution of nutrient, to be conservative in not only cost, but management of that nutrient. We control vapor pressure deficit levels inside this climate controlled environment. And so it's all part of controlled environment agriculture. And I think there's a lot of us in the industry that take a similar approach to it. And, with us, we created a farm company to use this technology because, again, when we first started, we were technologists and we needed to understand the farming aspect of it. So we took, all of us became farmers. We hired folks to come in and start our own farm company called Vertical Roots. And then, in the early days, we did not want to sell technology to people that hadn't been proven. So we essentially took prototypes, created a business with those prototypes, and then iterated on each version until we got to a point where we said, this is the right machine now to really help communities, to help commercial growers, research, and others succeed.
Working with all the different agrarian communities you've worked with, how has this experience shaped the way you view the food systems, especially here in the US? Are you seeing places where we can improve or how we can strengthen our food systems?
I think it's really about building networks of like-minded people that are interested in seeing success and interested in reducing food insecurity. I go back to Afghanistan. There was a team of the U.S. Army, the USAID, local contractors, local farmers, and then the people, and understanding what their needs were. And then I take that back to here in the United States, where we're able to leverage that experience we had as farmers. So now we're experts in the produce business. We're experts at retail, wholesale, food safety, horticulture, and now we're looking for others in communities that are trying to solve, issues of food insecurity is what it always takes me back to. And we can talk about different places where there's food insecurity, and one of them that comes to mind for me is Department of Corrections. And so we've worked two parallel projects, one in South Carolina, one in California, where we're bringing our technology to these corrections institutions, creating workforce development, selling produce back into the institution so that it can be run at, a profit center for the corrections, and then connecting former incarcerated people to jobs once they, upon either work release or they're completely done with their time. And what we found is that former incarcerated that are affiliated with agriculture have the lowest recidivism rates in the nation, where it's somewhere around 12 to 18% recidivism with those that are associated with agriculture, to up to 40% or more in those that don't affiliate with agriculture.
That's so interesting. What do you think it is that's different about agriculture? Is it the piece of working with nature? Is it just to have a job? What do you think the difference is?
I could speculate, but I think you're kind of onto something there, where it's just you're around plants, you're around nutrition, you're around the aspects of being food safe and the procedures that go, and you can kind of see a tangible benefit on the other side, where you're nourishing people through that agriculture process.
I agree. That's interesting. I'm going to have to think about that more. So, in our current agriculture system, what do you think the biggest challenges are right now? And how is AmplifiedAg working to solve those?
Well, amplified ag and controlled environment agriculture, generally speaking, is, we're set out to complement and supplement the traditional agriculture. It's never going to be a thing where we would replace traditional agriculture, but we identified, as many people have, the challenges to traditional agriculture, which is going to be, some of the things that are out there. You think about our planet right now, we're going to have 2 billion more people on this planet by the year 2050. There's not enough land on the planet right now to be able to, you would need twice the geographic size of the country of India to have enough farmland to go ahead and feed 2 billion more people. You've got the challenges of weather, weather instability. I talk to farmers in Texas, in the Southwest, and even in the Southeast, and there's challenges with inconsistent weather patterns, whether it be a drought, too much rain. They have difficulty with their growing seasons. You can look at water shortages across you look not too long ago in California, they had severe droughts. Lake Mead was at its lowest levels in decades. And so all of these things, combined with long distance travel and logistics associated with spoilage, led us to be able to kind of come in and fill those gaps, if you will, and fill those needs to be able to provide year-round growing, fill seasonal gaps, very conservative on water consumption. It takes us a liter of water to generate a pound of produce. That's unheard of.
Wow.
When you think of how much water is used in traditional agriculture, particularly in times when there's a drought.
That's incredible. And do you think that because you're doing the vertical farming, does that also minimize the amount of land needed?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So the vertical stacking, I could look at a shipping container farm that we manufacture is going to be about 900 linear feet or 900 square feet of growing. When you start looking at how many turns that we can get, we have a very short turn in a shipping container. It's about 21 days, 21 to 24 days. And so when you start running the numbers, getting 16 turns a year, the number of plants, it about approximates to 3 acres on the outside of growing. So you're saving a tremendous amount of land area, not to mention that, applicable to places that are hard to get, urban areas. You're looking at shipping container can be put virtually anywhere that there's space. The other challenge that's out there is the food supply Sarah, right now is not the problem. There's plenty of food right now in our country.
Mhm.
The challenge is, how do you get it to the austere and places that are underserved? You know, when I talk to people about supply chains and interstate travel. So if you have a truck that's coming along our interstate system, that's fine. But if you're not along the interstate system, like if I can look at even South Carolina, I look at a place like McCormick County. There's 5,000 people that live in McCormick County. It's not near any highway. There's no trucks that are regularly delivering food to these places. Same things with inner city neighborhoods. So when you look at the options of vertical farming, controlled environment, where you can bring the farm to the location and eliminate that shipping challenge altogether, that's a huge benefit.
I would imagine too, with your multiple cycles, it also greatly reduces waste and spoilage.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You know, we like to position these containers closest to the point of distribution or consumption. And when you think about the majority of produce, Salinas Valley and is about 95%, provides about 95% of the produce that's consumed east of the Mississippi. And you think about how long that takes to travel, and you're going to have spoilage. And so when you could take a container and now we're doing a hyperlocal solution, or we're positioned right next to the distribution center, that eliminates or greatly reduces their shrinkage.
And I know it's probably happened to you and your family. I grocery shop once a week and you get all your vegetables and they're fresh. And then, halfway through the week, you open your refrigerator and like, oh my gosh. And it's like, no matter what you try, it's gone bad. But the distribution, like you said, knowing that there's a corner market or a corner farm stand, that would improve everything. Okay. So what is your, like, looking big picture, future, what's your vision for the future of agriculture, especially when we think about urban farming, sustainability, and feeding population? Obviously, we're going to have to change how we do it. So what is your vision? Is it getting these shipping containers in every community? What's your vision?
Yeah, I would see it more along the lines of the challenges or the lessons I've seen being 10 years in this industry is controlled environment agriculture has built these massive, call them greenhouses or vertical farms that the capacity exceeds the consumption in the local area. And once you've exceeded the consumption of the local area, you have to put it on trucks. And now once you're putting it on trucks and you're putting it on 53-foot trailers, you've just replicated Salinas Valley. And Salinas Valley is the breadbasket of our country. They're able to produce a pound of produce for pennies, and that's not where you want to be. So when we look at particularly our version of controlled environment agriculture, we say hyperlocal solution, put enough capacity in the local area that would be consumed by that local area, and resist the temptation to expand that site. Instead, go to a different hub, recreate what you just created here at a different hub, satisfy that. And so now you're going community by community, solving issues rather than trying to do it from a large, farm or hub.
I like that you said resist the urge to expand. And I think that might be one of the hardest things for Americans. When we see something that's working good, we're always thinking, let's expand, let's make profit. But your idea is about sustainability. And I like that. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how society views food insecurity or agriculture, what would it be?
Well, I think in many respects, we're trying to solve a problem that people don't realize exists. So I would like people to really kind of understand the things that, I've learned, that I've talked about, and start to realize that we do have a problem that's going to bite us in the butt before we realize it. And that's my fear, is that one day we'll say, well, we don't have enough land. We don't have enough, to feed the people that need to be fed. And then we're going to look for options at that point when it's sort of too late.
Right.
So my magic wand would be to just educate and inform and, open people's eyes to the things that are out there right now.
So, side question, how do you think this could be implemented in community gardens? Because, like, for me, I don't have land to have a garden, but if I could rent something, a little space in a community garden, I would 100% do that. So, how can you align this with that idea of the community gardens and get more of the community involved in the farming?
Well, yeah, we've talked with a number of nonprofits. I was in New York City last week, and I went to the Food is Medicine seminar, which was an awesome, collection of folks that are all interested in getting healthy solutions out to people. And I talked with food distributors in New York City that are revamping community gardens throughout the city. They're going to an abandoned lot, and they're trying to improve a lot that's out there and create it into a sustainable food source. And so we started, discussing about potential that you could, position either a container there, right? And then if you have a container that was there, and I go back to my experience with the prisons, where you would take people in the local area, you would give them a job, you would teach them a trade, a skill. And we're not talking just labor, we're talking, management skills, horticulture skills, food safety, all these things that would be applicable and make them attractive. Give them a job, have them till the land, if you will, in these containers, and then, see the benefit into their community firsthand. And so that takes, when I go back and I talk to my friends at the VA medical centers, they have my friend Christine Goings. She's the senior advisor for food security across the VA systems. And we talk about, wouldn't it be great if we could get a container at a medical center? We could bring in a wounded warrior to train him to be entrepreneurial, to operate that system, sell the produce into the hospital to where other veterans could benefit from that, healthy food source that's coming from right outside their back step. And so I think it's just examples of like that. Can you get a group of people to say, we have a problem, we have a gap, let's figure out the resources that are needed, the people that are needed, get the local government involved, and say, let's agree to put this project together and do something good with it.
What I think is so interesting is as this conversation has gone on, it's evolved. You're not talking only about agriculture and food insecurity. You're quite literally talking about investing in people, giving people pride back, giving people a life, giving them job skills. It's economic development and community development. And it blows my mind that people aren't knocking down your door for this solution, because you could also take what you're doing and put it out of school. It would be a great learning project at middle schools and high schools, probably even some elementary schools. I would imagine it could even work at some senior centers, right? Because senior citizens don't want to ask for help. So could you imagine if they could produce some of their own produce? It's just
Right.
what you're saying makes so much sense.
Well, and it's funny you say that, because yesterday it was brought to my attention. The USDA has come up with a farm to school grant program that's going to, infuse millions of dollars into areas where we could bring that, whatever application it doesn't have to be a container farm, but dollars that are invested in educating our children of the importance of fresh food, of plants, of eating better. That's going to do everything from, reduce obesity to better health, to training people at these jobs again that we've both been talking about. I'm really excited to see that come back, because I think we took a step back a little bit here in the past year on some of these grants that were available, and I'm happy to see that come back out. So hopefully we'll be able to get into some of these school scenarios, because I do have a bunch of schools that have been calling me this year trying to explore
Good.
opportunities to get a solution on their campus.
And you know what I love about it too is it's so positive and so educational. And for the kids that traditional learning is difficult, sitting in a classroom and behind a desk, what you're offering can be the difference in in high school dropouts or successful careers because you're giving kids a hands-on experience, and some of them just need that.
Right. Yep. It's on the job training type thing, but experiential learning is something to be said for that.
If you could leave the audience with one piece of information to inspire them to do vertical farming or indoor agriculture, or, and we haven't touched on this, maybe speak to their local government and get their local government to reach out to you, what would that piece of information be?
I think the piece of information would be that, vertical farming as a place, I think people need to understand where their food comes from. I
Mhm.
think when you look at vertical farming, most of it is going to be a hyper-local solution. And that hyper-local solution is going to be the freshest produce that you can get. It's going to have the longest shelf life, and it's going to be year round. At this conference I went to last week, it was, people don't buy certain things that are not in season. They wait for, summer corn or whatever else is going to be the freshest in season. And we have an opportunity where it could be the freshest in season all year round.
Which would be absolutely amazing. And so I would encourage you, if you're listening to this podcast and this inspires you, speak to your local government. I mean, of course, you can reach out to David, I'm sure, but if you had that local representative reaching out to David, that community would probably really be helpful. He's very easy to talk to, and this is a really exciting idea. And if you're like me, I work all day in an office. At the end of the day, there's nothing better than getting my hands in dirt. It's part of my mental health. I don't know if you would agree, David. There's just something about mental health and gardening or
Yeah.
farming, and I think too, one thing I really want to point out is you hear that it's a hyper local solution. So you're thinking, well, how is this going to help the community? But it is, because when you get those hyper local solutions going, they create what I like to call a ripple effect, because people visit your community and they see it and they think, oh, they can do it. I can do it. And so you slowly see this growing until it addresses county problems, state problems, national problems. And it's going to grow into that big of a business, or that big of a solution.
Right. 100% agree.
David, thank you so much for your time today. If there's anything I can do to help you, please don't hesitate to reach out. But I really appreciate your passion and sharing this idea with us. It was very interesting. And I truly hope that we see you all over the country.
All right, Sarah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You have a great day and look forward to staying in touch.
You too. Bye.
Bye.